Welcome back, my friends, to the sweet spot where IT leaders share the insight with all leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Houghton and Paul Lewis. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
So, one in a hotel, one in a castle.
I'm in a hotel, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm in a hotel. I do not have jaundice. I just have terrible lighting.
I'm in the glorious Montreal, Quebec, Canada, having a latte and the closest you can get to a European croissant. It's glorious.
I'm in the Grand American Hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is a kind of what you would get from a hotel if you built it during the late 19th century, during kind of the gold rush era of expansion. And you had unlimited funds and lots of coal dust inhaled by the designer, because every single thing has a tremendously different pattern.
I see. Is it a shared water closet and you have to get the water outside?
Oh, no. The room is enormous. And like, there's a whole room that like, if this thing was in New York, this room was in New York, it would actually be the bedroom, but it's just a little like hole that houses a closet that doesn't connect to anything.
I see.
Like I have actually had hotels in New York that were smaller than just the little entryway. The hotel was in New York, I don't know why, but it's great, fine.
And those hotels never have ironing boards and irons. A huge
they did put an ironing board in here and a steamer.
A steamer, fancy.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't have the slightest idea what it costs. It's part of the speaker package, so I have no idea.
Speaker package, fancy. I look forward to doing the conference tours again.
Yeah, they are starting. This one went pretty well. They invited me to. They're starting their leadership conference tour, so they invited me to speak on their leadership conference tour. So that should be fun. I'm doing another one 2 weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. I think it's 2 weeks. Might be a week. Whatever. It's sometime in the future that is not today. I'm sure I'll have a similarly well put together day.
Just keep the week of the November 8th still open.
It is still open.
I require you at that other conference.
It didn't look like it was going to be open there for a bit. We've got I had an issue at a foreign location that was going to pull me away.
An issue at a foreign location. Foreign to Salt Lake City.
Foreign, like extra national to the United States.
I see. Got it.
That was going to have me that was going to have me fly across the ocean.
Now that trip, that's what I'm waiting for. I haven't flown across a body of water other than the Great Lakes.
Right.
In a long time.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So
business class seat, lay down. Oh yeah.
Okay. The lay downs are fun. The free liquor's nice. The lay down. I like the foreign language, but really it's the instant jump in status that I think is fantastic.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
You get a dramatic amount of points with a single flight.
You do.
Yeah.
So we were chatting a little bit before this started, and I said I once convinced a flat earther to see the light.
Right.
And I like the story because this kind of thing doesn't happen very often. I don't really encounter a lot of flat earthers, but no. I actually converted one. Nice. And we were kind of in a conversation, and I'm like, you realize there's not flat. And he goes, yeah, it is. They staged the moon landing. Like, we've never been to space. All those pictures were faked, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. But that's not how we know the earth is flat or the earth is round. And he's like, okay, what do you mean? And I said, we've known for hundreds of years because you don't need to leave the earth to observe the curvature of the earth.
Right.
What do you mean? Okay, so you're standing at the dock watching ships come in circa 1492.
Right.
What is the first part of the ship you see?
Flag.
I don't know. You see the flag at the top of the mast. Oh yeah, I remember reading that. Right, why is that? It's the smallest piece of the boat. Why do you see it first? And he goes, I don't know. I said, it's because of the horizon effect of the curve from the curvature of the Earth. Because it sticks up the tallest, it's the first thing to be visible over the horizon. Right. If the Earth was flat, you would see the hull of the ship first, as it is the largest piece.
Right.
He said, you're full of it. I don't believe you. Disappeared for 10 minutes, came back and said, oh my God, you're right. How did I never know this? What happened to my, like, we went to school together. What happened to my education? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, honestly, Howard, no one's explained it that simply to me. I went, yeah, dude, that's how we know the Earth is round. That's why, like, even in Columbus's day, no one actually believed the Earth was flat. We had already reached a consensus that the Earth was round. Right. But
just based on that simple observation.
It was Columbus that discovered the world was round. No, sir. No. There were just flat earthers at the time. Like,
right.
A total misnomer.
And they controlled the media
for hundreds of years. Yeah. Then he told the media false news was created.
Right. It was the first fake news.
Oh, that's a deep conversation.
So if we think about that.
Here we go. Put your seatbelts on.
It's interesting what you mentioned, that he got the same education and it didn't work correctly for him. He received similar to you mentioned. So it didn't click. Sometimes that happens when you are doing something. You're presenting, you're sharing information, you're talking to someone, and things don't click. They don't play. So what do you do when you're doing something and you may be on the wrong place? People don't get the information. Your deck may not even work. You don't have.
You're going with this, Carlos. I just don't get it.
What happens when your deck doesn't play?
First of all, that's never happened to me. I've only had perfect presentations my entire career.
Wow.
So I'm not familiar with the series of stories we're about to tell.
Perfect presentation. Now, what happened when your deck doesn't play? When you are somewhere with someone and you may have a technical flaw, you may have, actually, you presented a great deck and it's a completely wrong audience. Or at the end of the day, AV doesn't work.
I think it's a good question because it happened to me yesterday.
Perfect.
Right. New topic, new kind of role thing, new presentation, right? I hadn't done this presentation before. Spent a tremendous amount of time getting it the way I wanted, like a whole hour and a half. And so it wasn't like I had the value of doing this 20 times where I kind of had a patois down. And AV didn't work. No clue, right? Likely a series of dongle mismatches between my USB-C only laptop and their, multi-display confabulator. I don't know the thing. Making up the word, but
they only had VGA input.
Well, it was HDMI, but then it went from that down to some repeater box that handled the TV in front, and then went to another thing that recorded and sent to the two TVs to the side, like.
Right.
And it just wouldn't present. So we mucked with it during the presenter setup. Right. And he's like, yeah, I can't. It's not working. Like, okay, I don't have another laptop, so this is the one laptop I have. So
right.
We can. And he goes, well, I don't know what to do. Okay, cool. I'll just I'll go deckless. It doesn't really bother me.
What was the length of this presentation?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Okay. So you are now tap dancing for 45 minutes. What was going through your head?
Actually relief for me, because again, I didn't have a patois.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't the first couple times you run through a deck, it's a little awkward in front of a live audience because you don't have the timing down. You don't really know everything that's on the next slide. You don't really know everything that's on the current slide. So you have to keep referring back to them. as you kind of do your thing, it kind of pins you in place a little bit. They had a podium set up, and so what I did instead was I just walked around the podium and I announced to the room. I said, "Hey, everybody, the deck's not working. We don't have any video. If everybody can hear me, okay, how do you feel about just having a conversation?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. Cool. Let's start talking about low code," because that's what it was, the business case for low code. And I just said, "How many people use low code?" and started a conversation, and just did a 45 minutes of a Q&A where it was all Q. And the A could be in depth.
Right. You could have a 10-minute answer if you had to.
Right. And I allowed them to steer the conversation where they wanted to go. So we didn't stay within the boundary of low code. Right. We obviously drifted into no code, right? Yeah. Got into some business process automation, some RPA, moved into data, and had a conversation about data quality and master data management, and got a little bit into metadata and kind of the value of metadata, and then some best practices around getting that set up and started, and what a center of innovation is and a center of excellence is, and those sort of things.
What was the size of the audience? Was this 1,000 people? Was it 10 people?
Very, very small.
Yeah. Okay.
Thousands of people would be different, but ultimately I'd still do the same thing. I would still look to the first 3 rows and make it personal.
Engage them directly.
Correct.
Yeah. I would find that difficult because sometimes an audience of that size, you're far away even from the first 3 rows. Like you're 4 feet up on a stage, the stage is 20 by 20. It's still more difficult to engage versus an audience of 50 people that you're probably can touch them, right? You might not even have a stage, or you're just going to get off the stage because it was only 5 by 5 anyway.
But yeah, no, I will not likely get off the stage unless I do it one time and then I'm done. I'm not back on the stage.
Right. You're not going back up and down.
Well, it's that leg mobility issue that I have, right, from the motorcycle accident. I'm not doing stairs when I'm the presenter.
Right.
Right. Like that's a big deal for me. I've already got mobility issues. I don't want to trip and fall because I'm not paying enough attention.
Right. So rate the output of that. So do you believe that was a better exercise than the original plan to present your slides?
So in this case, I would say, so in this case, I would say the value to the audience was significantly improved the way that I did it yesterday.
Right.
However, the value to my employer was reduced because their logo and their name didn't get splashed 4 or 5 times. I said it 4 or 5 times, but you don't have kind of the 3 things, right? You don't have the 3 attachment points if I just say it over and over. Plus I hit it, I used some articles that the company had written as reference points. And then my final slide actually had QR codes to each article. There were 4
call to actions so you could get them to subscribe to some product.
Yeah. So they didn't get to see that. So that wasn't possible. But again, I think the value to the audience was significantly improved because it was very personal.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to talk about it. I didn't talk about it.
So this showed, like we've talked about this before, considering we have different presentation skill sets, I would be very, very comfortable without AV on a topic that I already had a mastery of, right? Because the reality is any presentation I have presented 1,000 times, the slides are behind me and you can visually walk through the story I'm talking about, but I never reference the slides, right? I don't look back and say, this bullet point right here, this box connects to this other box. You don't see me doing that. You just see the visuals behind me and I'm pushing the button without you knowing I'm pushing the button just so it feels like the story is going behind you. If I didn't have AV, that story would be the exact same with the same level of emotion, the same kind of intonation, the same kind of, pre-understanding what the questions are going to be. And I think it would be successful. It would not be successful if this was if this was a presentation I was presenting for the first time. Because as you said, I do reference slides because I'm not as familiar with the next slide or the current slide looks like. I haven't created the pattern that I think will be effective for the audience. I would struggle in that situation. Now, I would attempt to present a storyline that I would be familiar with, but it would not resonate as much as the original would resonate. I guarantee that's not going to occur.
Let me ask you
and
this question.
My hopes would be that I'd have at least the deck in front of me, right, and on my screen, so that I could reference it if I had to present.
Do you create story first, or do you create the logic or the content first when you guys do your presentation?
They're tightly coupled for me, honestly. Mostly because I don't. So if I just do story first, then the content will never match.
Mhm.
Right? Because I'll get wrapped in the story. I'll be like, okay, this is the story, and I'll have built the story relatively thoroughly in my mind about what I want to talk about, and then not be able to connect it back, because I'm not a PowerPoint wizard, right? So I won't be able to connect it back to the PowerPoint, because I just won't be able to put the things where I want the things to have them look the way I want. So what I do instead is I have a very light story and then start working on the PowerPoint. And I find when I don't do that, the two don't ever really have enough of a connection. It's why, like Paul's brought this up several times, my decks often don't match my story, because the content's not, the content's a amalgamation of the thing that I was given to work from, plus some edits that I made to it, and it was never really mine, and it never really fit the story that I started working on while someone else was working on the first version of the deck.
And for me, most organizations are very, very good producing what slides, right? What it is, when you'd implement it, that kind of stuff. Very, very few do the why slides. So I spend all of my time in the why. The first half dozen slides almost never exist, and I have to recreate them from scratch so that we've preparing the audience for the what. The reason why you want to hear this, all the trends that are happening, the things that are happening to you personally, these are all true. And since all of these are true and we're all nodding in the slides, let's talk about what we're going to do about it. And then you start presenting the what slides. So most of my time and energy is creating the whys. And then I just fill in the what's that are already there. And I kind of add to them. I may make minor modifications, but for the most part, the what's are okay.
And if we're being honest, the what's not why you're there. Right. If the what was obvious, they could just go to your website and find the what, because those what slides, that what information is available on everybody's website.
Right.
Right. And it's always frustrating to me when I'm an audience member and they're just presenting the what.
Right. Go straight into the what. Let me tell you about my product. What?
Yep, most presenters go straight into the what. That's why they're brought there. That's what they're paid. That's what they're told they're paid to do. And those are the slides that they're given. Right? You and I worked for the same organization. We never, ever, ever got a Y slide, even if we had provided a Y slide back to them.
Correct. They removed it before
the Y slide out and said, no. Where are the other slides? Oh, we didn't like those slides. They didn't meet with. Okay, cool. I'm not presenting without them.
Right.
Right.
I reserve the right to put my slides back in.
The hook completely for the audience.
Right.
The hook is not the what. The hook is the why.
Why?
Until we all agree on the why, we're never going to agree on the what, or the
That's
how,
right.
or the who. You have to agree on the why.
Right.
Oh well, we don't. No, we disagree. Okay, cool. Then you go present it.
That's right. Because, and I think this is the distinct difference between how we would see the world, especially as consumers of technology versus sellers of technology. Most products are the same, right? Most competitive products pretty much do the same thing, slightly differently, I agree, and different maturities. But for the most part, I could download, install each one of them, and they probably would solve my problem. So since that's true, going right into the what doesn't help you in any way. You have to talk about the underlying reasons why one needs to solve this problem so that people are already on your side. Once they're already on your side and we believe we're peers, then they'll want to implement your recommendation because you've solved their problem before.
So I know this part because we have done it, but before you go, Howard, go a little bit deeper into that for the audience, because you just said something that I've seen the three of us do, you guys, when you guys are on stage, but a lot of people dive directly without making the connection, and the why is what made the connection for that trusted connection with the presenter. So then later on, they will agree with it.
That was actually what I was gonna say. Because I had this conversation over and over and over again with the CEO of Hitachi, right? Because Hitachi would do, hey, this is our storage thing, right? And it would be different than the storage story from the other vendors, right? Pure would have a different storage story, right? And yes, it's storage, it does the same thing. But I'm like, that's not like, why did we make a choice to invest our engineering time into that, right? Why is the fastest array in whatever measure IOPS will go with, right? Why is 4 million IOPS in a single frame so important to Hitachi, right? What do you mean? I mean, at some point there's a decision made on where we're going to invest our engineering time, and we feel that this is the place to invest our engineering time. Why did we do that versus any other number of improvements and call it a new array? Well, I don't know. But yeah, but that's the interesting part.
That's right.
Right? The number of customers that needed, I don't remember how many IOPS, it was some insane amount of IOPS. The number of customers that need that number of IOPS is effectively 1.
Exactly.
Right? There's not likely to be more than a handful, if there's even 2,
right,
who really need it in a single frame.
Right.
Across my organization, sure, but
Sure.
should I do it in 20 different devices? Likely. Would I want to if the management interface is good enough?
And the reality is my organization is that size, so I have 8 line of businesses anyway. Right?
Sure, and more than 1 storage admin.
Right.
Right. So the reality is you're only building it for the case where it has to be within 1 frame.
Right.
Right. Where something about the architecture prevents me from splitting the workload and aggregating it. So you're building it for this really specific use case, and there might be other pieces there, but until I know the why, how do I, as a customer, how do I reconcile myself with, is this my why as well? And thus, should I buy this thing? Because that's what we do. We don't look to the what, we look to the why, right?
You had a good example. My example for this exact same situation was the 8-second gap, right? So we introduced a product that was 8 nines of availability versus 6 nines of availability. And the difference between those 2 availability sets is 8 seconds. And the question is, why would we have invested in 8 seconds? We probably put, $30 million in creating a frame to which resolved itself much quicker. And nobody ever got to the why this was interesting and important. And I had to keep pushing because 8 seconds matters in a lot of situations, like stopping trains, like landing planes, like baby heart monitors, right? 8 seconds absolutely matters. That's why we invested. That's why you'd invest in the product with us, right? That's the distinct difference between the actual feature and functionality of the system. I didn't talk about 8 nines availability. I talked about 8 seconds.
Yep, but that was your why.
Yeah.
Right? You invented that why, whereas the engineering team didn't. They just were chasing something that didn't matter. They were chasing something that wasn't a why.
That's right. They were chasing 100% availability.
Correct, which is a what? Because again, 100% availability only matters in the theoretical.
Right.
Right? Because there's no such thing outside a lab anyhow. And the reality is 100% availability is 100% of things working when I need them to work.
Right.
And I don't likely need everything to work all of the time perfectly.
Right. Nor can I afford it, even if that was physically possible.
Correct. Right. So you invented that why.
Yes.
And that's actually kind of the frustration. Right. The frustration is I can't really get on stage without a why. And if I can't get you to tell me the why, then I have to invent the why. Right? All the time I spend as an analyst talking to, various companies, the very first call is, what is your why? And honestly, they don't know.
Which goes back to the original theme of the pod, even though we mostly have heard from it. When I have had AV problems in the past, I almost entirely talk about the why at that point, because the why is my experience, the why is my background, the why is why we're all here, the why is probably what the audience is looking for, and I'm not a master of the what anyway, right? I haven't mastered the features and functions of the product. I really don't know everything about what it does, but that's not why you've asked me to come and present anyway, right? These are the last 3 or 4 slides to which I tend to go through quickly anyway, right? And if you want to double click, I'm sure I can find somebody in my audience that'd be able to help you with those answers, right? So since I wasn't intending on presenting those, even if they're visually apparent anyway, I'm going to avoid presenting them entirely and talk exclusively about my experience in this particular domain.
Does it change if the audience is more technical, that the why is not as important and that they will be looking more for the what? And I'm asking the question because we have seen it, and I want to double click on that, because sometimes we think, well, if it's higher up in the organization, they will be focusing probably on the why, and they probably align it with budgets or funding, versus lower or more technical audiences that they just focus on, give me how to do it. Should our leaders or our audience that is listening think before they do a presentation first on the why versus the what, based on who they present to?
So I think I think you have two different questions there. One, I would say, is a flat no, right? Which is kind of the first part, right? Should an audience that is more technical not receive the why or have a different level of concentration on the why? And I would say absolutely not, right? Because the first audience, that audience is actually the one that needs the why the most, because they tend to focus on the what, and they tend to not get their project sold. They tend to not get their initiative sold. They tend to not be able to, like, they're great at creating innovation, but innovation fundamentally requires a why. And they tend to focus on the what. This new framework is neat. This new tool is neat. This new product is neat. Okay, cool. But I don't buy neat. I buy why. So until you can tell me how your innovation aligns with our why and start thinking about why, your innovation is not going to go anywhere. I can't get anything out of the lab, right? Why is that? I just keep. So then obviously the product was broken. The product was never broken. In some cases it definitely is, but it's not likely to be a product problem. It's likely to be a why problem. Right? So when you're selling to someone who's looking at why, not what, you need to also sell using why, not what. And so I think in that case, an audience that is more technical hearing why has tremendous value. Now, at the same time, you do need to understand your audience. And the way you frame the why is very different, and the value of the why is very different than when you're talking to an executive group that cares so little, isn't going to use the what, versus people who are going to use the what and still need to understand the why, right? The why being the bridge, I think, between the audiences.
My biggest fails of presentation have not been AV. They've been entirely content versus audience expectation. So when the audience is very, very technical, they have an expectation of technical deep dives. That's not what's going to be delivered for me. So I'll have people walk away from those presentations giving poor reviews, given that I didn't double click on a whole bunch of things they thought I should double click on. Now that is a failure of myself for reading the audience. It's a failure of whoever was setting me up to talk in that particular circumstance. And of course, they probably should have read into the topic that we were about to jump into. You know, I clearly wasn't going to talk about the latest release of the software. That's interesting, but that has been my biggest failures with my smallest amount of positive reviews. And I've done presentations where I've mistakenly been highly profane, and I've been deep into a demo of a product. This is way back in 20 years ago, where I let the S word fly in an audience of well more than 2,000 people. This was a keynote doing a presentation of a demo of a product that was just built, and I mistakenly used that word, and I just had to keep going. I had to not recognize that this was going, and I just kept going in the demo. And I don't know, even today I live to regret what happened. It was ugly. But in fairness, I'm not one that swears frequently, right? I'm not a profane kind of person in my everyday speech. So that was actually a unique just for me personally. Howard's first
Hi, Paul, I'm so proud of you. Yeah,
but it was loud. Like a room of 2,000 people is a loud, large room.
True, it's true. I'm sure it got really quiet too. I'm sure all the little muttering chatter just vanished.
Exactly.
So Tony Robbins used the S, the F, all the colorful words for a whole weekend, and people start cheering for him. So don't worry if you said it once.
Yeah, but that's actually a huge difference, right? Because I'm closer to Tony Robbins than I am Paul. Right? I use profanity like color in a portrait or seasoning on a dish.
Right.
It is simply common parlance for me. It's hard for me to not use it during this podcast simply because I'm so used to using it. It's so commonplace for me, and I don't use it here because I don't want our podcast to get flagged. I just mean here, like literally within the last 30 seconds.
Right.
Because when Paul said I don't use profanity, I wanted to say no, shoot. Doesn't use profanity. But I knew that would likely get us flagged if we were caught using profanity. Because for me, I don't think about it, right? I'm a lot more like Tony Robbins, but it also means after the first time, it's not really the wow. Right. Versus Paul saying it one time in his life probably had more impact than every single time I've said it in my life.
It's true.
Right? And it certainly had more impact for Paul. Right.
We need to look for that video.
I actually can't.
It might exist.
I can't remember a time where I've said it or not said it. You know what I mean? Like it's not, it no longer, it just doesn't come up. The only time that I can actually remember using profanity in a way that it was commented on was in my Hitachi interview, where afterwards Paul's feedback to me was, you're a little bit
rough around the edges.
Rough around the edges. That was it. That was it. You're a little rough around the edges. And I paused and I was like,
what do you mean?
Oh, is that because I said expletive here in the interview? And he said, yes. Oh, yeah, okay, I can handle that. I didn't know if it was something else. I didn't know and in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't know if it was from something important that I should be aware of. But no, I do that.
Right. That's right. What other obscene thing did I say?
Well, yeah. What other rough around the edges? Like, am I missing some piece of knowledge that
some skill set? Yeah.
Right. Is there a skill problem? No, it wasn't that at all. It was the use of profanity. And I'm like, oh no, I do that on purpose. And Paul was like, excuse me, what? And then we kind of went into that explanation of why I do that very specifically. And
in that circumstance, it must have been your interview with the HR person that it was highlighted to me.
It was the interview with the HR person, yes. I did it with everyone, but yes, it was the HR person.
Yeah, but the others didn't mention it to me, as if, you know, that's just, in fairness, most people knew who you were already, right? Howard was a known entity in this circumstance. So,
and the only other person who didn't really know who I was very, very well was also Canadian, and I think he just assumed that's how Americans are.
It's true. It's just a general assumption.
Where does he live? Denver? Oh, okay. Well,
that's fine.
The cowboy.
Yeah, it is an organization that I knew very, very well, and it is an organization that shared a notebook of things Howard has said in the past. Right? Like there's that book, Shoot, My Dad Says. It's not shoot, but again, try to avoid the profanity. And it was a published book, and they made a TV show out of it. And it was just weird things that their dad said. There was a similar one for stuff Howard said.
That's
I know it for a fact because I got introduced to people that way. Oh, I wanted to meet you. So and so shared this thing that you said at this thing, and there's a whole list, and I want to hear more of them. Okay, it's a little awkward way to meet someone because I don't know what they wrote down.
Did you have the book? I would publish it.
No, I don't actually. I should see if anybody still has it.
That'd be hilarious.
Publish it. That would be a great lead magnet.
I could
meet Howard.
It'd be a little weird to do it yourself, though, wouldn't it? Like somebody else has to publish it. It's got to be.
True.
It's got to be observational. Otherwise, it's just bizarre.
It has to be updated. We've got to give it to your current team and say, update this list. We want to hear what else he says. The last thing I'd say is, in this situation, a big fail that I've encountered many times is when you expect an audience of, let's say, 100 and you get an audience of 3. So you're expecting a very large presentation with, you're on stage and you've got the hand motion, you're going to speak loud and enthusiastically, and now you can't do any of those things, right? Now that entire process is out. You're going to get off the stage. You're going to have everybody sort of huddle a little closer. You're going to probably sit down with them and now it's just a conversation, right? You're not going to present anything. You're not even going to attempt to bring the screens up because it's awkward, right? There's the last thing they want to do is 3 people look at a screen. So now you're just going to sit down, have a conversation, and it might be fruitful. I'm not saying the conversation won't be good, but it'll be very, very different than your expectation was.
So I'd like to close with a little piece of advice. So let's say you're on stage and it's gone sideways. Video doesn't work, maybe audio doesn't work, maybe the audience isn't what you expected. Maybe you expected 10 and you got 1,000. Maybe you expected 1,000, you got 10. My advice is simply this: calm down, right? Recognize that expectations are nothing more than the mind failing us, because they've set us up with something that is not attached to reality. It's an expectation. Take a moment, step out from behind the podium and look at the individuals and recognize that they're just people. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they're in the room is to see you. And the totality of their expectation is whatever was written in the program.
Right.
Right. Somebody said yesterday, day before yesterday, when I started, when they were showing me what they put together as a deck that I didn't use. How will they know who you are if you don't tell them? And I said, it doesn't actually matter because they're already in the room. Right?
They're already convinced to be there.
Correct. I mean, they're already in the room. I'm guaranteed the first 5 minutes.
Right.
Because it's too much work in the first 5 minutes to get up and leave and awkwardly walk into another session. I'm guaranteed to have them for the first 5 minutes. Then all I have to do is not piss them off so much that they're like, oh, this sucks. I gotta go. I'm gonna go now, be late for the next session. They're already in the room. So take a deep breath and recognize they're already in the room.
Yep.
If the audience is small and it's broken, if the audience is huge, just have a conversation. You're there because you have some expertise that they do not have. Just give them that expertise. And the moment that they start to drift, ask a question. Mm-hmm. And pick someone. It's not, I'm gonna use low code as an example. Sir, do you use low code? No, we don't. Okay, so what brought you into the session today? Oh, well, we were thinking about using it. Okay, well, where are you at in your journey? Let's talk about 3
easy
things
questions that don't require a lot of forethought. Yep.
And while you're concentrating on that one person, there's 70 other people in the room that are going, I have the same question. I'm just glad he didn't call on me, but I'm glad he answered that question. And you move on to another person who has a different question, and 70 other people go, thank God, that was the question I was looking to get asked.
Right.
And 70 other people. And it doesn't matter if it's not 70. It doesn't matter if it's just that one.
Right.
It's okay. Because you're going to ask another question and ask another question and ask another question. And it's also okay if you don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. And it's a little outside my experience.
Right.
Let's ask the audience and see, has anyone else encountered this?
Right.
That's totally okay. Right. You can think of yourself at that point as the moderator of the room. Right. And everyone's going to remember that time where it went sideways and the presenter just moved on.
Right.
Right. Or they're not going to remember it. And that's sometimes even better. But they will remember that time that it went sideways and the presenter had a meltdown.
Yeah. That's the advice I always give. It's just an hour of your life. It honestly doesn't matter in the holistic, 85 to 90 years you're going to have. It doesn't matter. Good, bad, or indifferent. Have a goal of good, but even if it goes badly, it's only an hour of your life. Who cares? It's not a huge burden. It probably shouldn't even burden your week, let alone burden your lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, it's been awesome to realize that sometimes your presentation may go to the C but you actually can recover from it and not focus on that. But take the advice. Sometimes it's better to have a conversation, even when you're on stage. You don't want to be talking at the people. You want to engage and bring them in, ask questions, because that's how learning moves us forward. My friends, make sure that you subscribe, you share, and we'll see you on our next episode.